First off, and welcome to the Find Your Film podcast. I really love finding gems, and this is a documentary. This is very value added, and it's also immersive as far as learning another person's life. Were these two aspects a big reason why you guys decided to team up in doing this documentary that's not just about climate change, also has a personal POV attached to the topic?
Yeah, I think the way it came about, actually, we didn't want to make a climate change film. There's a lot of those, and they say seemingly everything about climate change, and a lot of them feel very informational. So it was never an aspiration of ours to make a climate change film. We actually met years ago because Alex married a friend of mine from college, and we went out to dinner. And when you work in movies, there's a thing that happens where people find out you work in movies and they're like, hey, I got an idea for a TV show or a movie. Um, and we started talking, and that happened. And he basically said, I'm a scientist. I watch all the science stuff when it comes out, and none of it hits me. Like, none of it really captures what I love about science and exploration.
It all feels like
So,
homework. That's what I said. Yeah.
yeah. So I felt the same. Like, I grew up loving science. The scientific method was important to me. And I was like, yeah, where's the drama? Like, people used to be burnt at the stake for revealing truth. Like, is any drama around science today? And we set out to find out. We got a grant from the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation to find the best stories in science. And in that search, we came across Lonnie Thompson, and he told us these big adventure stories. Then he told us about going into denial about the facts about his heart, and this idea of a climate scientist telling the world about the facts of climate change and everyone being in denial about it. But when he got his own facts, he went into denial. It just had us on the verge of tears. And Alex turned to me and said, if there's one story that we tell in this world, it's got to be this one.
Was, just trying to reach a parallel, was making this documentary just seemingly just very challenging? Because just looking at the entire narrative, it's just a wide scope, and there's a lot of footage to go through. You guys made it not a talking head documentary, which I would have been fine with, but you add a lot of VO, a lot of footage, a lot of information. What was the challenge in you guys putting it together, and then just, I'm assuming, just all that time in the edit together, just doing it?
I think that's the first thing. I think is the biggest challenge we had up front was taking Danny comes from the Chef's Table world, where he's the executive producer and director on Chef's Table, which is, kind of set the standard for how this type of documentary work can be done. And we had the dream of, let's take that Chef's Table style crew up a 19,000-foot mountain. And so challenge one was, how the heck do we do this? And everyone was telling us, you can't do this. This is not possible. But we knew that if we wanted to tell the story, we wanted to tell it right. And we needed the right tools and the right people to do that. So, challenge number one was, okay, how do we get an entire crew up there with all the equipment, all the proper equipment? How do we make sure that none of us are getting sick at altitude? Because you get above 11,000 feet and people can start to drop off like flies. So we did oxygen deprivation training at home, where we had slept at a simulated 20,000 feet for 3 weeks in advance, just to make sure that we didn't miss this opportunity. Then there's, like you said, Lonnie's been doing expeditions for, 40 years, almost 50 years now, in 16 countries, the tallest peaks across the planet. And so sourcing that material, all the footage from every expedition he's ever been on, anyone who's ever been with him, we reached out, said, did you have a camera? What can we use? So then sorting through all that material and then pulling it together, a huge challenge was, there's like, we could have made 6 or 7 films of the stories this guy has and the inspirational points. So we had to cut out a lot of stuff that I still think is absolutely resonant, and it serves a purpose somewhere, but just not as part of the narrative of this film. I don't know if you want to speak further to that, Danny.
Yeah, I mean, the way I always put it is, your film is only as good as the best thing on your cutting room floor. So if you're not cutting good stuff out of your film, you're either making a bad film because you can't afford to do it, the subject matter's thin, or you're just not disciplined at serving the story. So like my experience on Chef's Table, we've now told the life story of dozens and dozens of people. So I get pretty adamant about if it doesn't serve the story, if it feels like a departure or like the story lags, you lose it. And then that'll tell you whether it's needed or not. So it's hard to do because when you're in the thick of it, your idea of what resonates changes and it warps. So we ended up showing the film to a lot of people to get a sense of what's resonating and readjusting our plan based on how well things are being communicated, which was a really like rigorous and intensive process. But yeah, the challenge was like Lonnie's lived 1,000 lifetimes and had 1,000 adventures, and not all of those served the larger story of his life. So we had to have the discipline to be like, that's a great story, but it's not for the film.
I'm waiting for the 6-hour director's cut, so I'm on board. If you guys ever release that, I'll be the first one to purchase it. By the way, I won't ask for a review copy. I'll buy it. So just FYI.
That would not be a
it.
director's cut, or that would be an Alex cut. I
Okay.
would never do that to people.
Okay, Alex, I'm gonna be one of those people. Okay,
Hey,
so anyways,
I got you.
Both versions are awesome, by the way. So just look, this is sort of a subtext to this documentary. He's married, he has a child, and a lot of people. I'm just an uncle. I don't know if you guys have kids or are married yourselves, but some people, once they get married or especially have children, they can say, well, I'll put my career on the back burner and I can go on sort of a good solid cruise control for the rest of my life because my life is going to be for my family. Understandable. But it just seems that Lonnie continued to ramp up his ambition no matter what the cost and no matter the existential dread around everything. From your knowledge and working with him close at hand and actually kind of shadowing maybe his journey, do you have an interpretation on what makes him tick, and no matter what happens along the way for him, he keeps on moving forward?
I love that question. I think the biggest thing is, and Danny, push back or give a different interpretation if you think is, when someone finds the thing that they're passionate about, it becomes a driving force in and of itself. And Lonnie has worked so hard and failed so many times to try to figure out how do we bring back ice cores and the records contained in the glaciers in the high mountains. He created this whole wave of science that didn't exist before. Right? He figured out how to do something that people told him was impossible. And in that, surrounding himself with the people that, bought into that dream, he created a world of people who, they were teams. He could rely and trust on people. They'd spend 3 months of a year up at 18,000 feet doing this work. And I think there's a certain camaraderie around purpose that you realize you can't step away from this. When you're one of the few people doing this kind of work, and you see the types of results that come back, and when you realize that this is who you are, that becomes the purpose, right? And I think he is an amazing father as well. I have a daughter, and I spent a lot of time on the mountain talking with Lonnie about raising kids. And that one of the things that's wonderful about Lonnie is he listens to everybody, every single person from every walk of life. He understands who you are, what drives you, so that he can help fit you into his dream and understand how he can support your dream. And that is what makes someone like Lonnie successful. But for example, his wife, Ellen Mosley Thompson, did her expeditions in the polar regions, so in Antarctica and in Greenland. The polar regions have the opposite season from the tropical season. So Lonnie would go in the summer, and then he would come back home and watch the kid, and Ellen would go off to Antarctica. So they have this kind of tag team approach to raising their kids. And, the daughter, Regina, is an amazing character in her own right. We can talk about her another time, but they've done a wonderful job figuring out how to both follow their passions and the things that they knew how to do really well, and just be good people, good parents, and awesome collaborators.
Danny, did you draw that
Yeah,
line too? Yeah, that find that bond.
I think what I really thought of was kind of where Alex was landing, which is, you know, some people's value systems would be like, don't keep working, take a break, spend more time with your family. And there is an adjustment that they've made later in life to focus less on work. But who they are is they are ambitious people, everyone in Lonnie's family. And they are all dedicated to their projects. They're all working together, supporting each other. And there's just the spirit that you don't really notice because they're Lonnie and Ellen are so Midwestern and how they you know like talk to each other and carry themselves, but they are absolutely ambitious, sharp as a whip scientists who have accomplished so much because they have like a relentless energy and a pursuit. And to add to what Alex said, like Lonnie did this work first, and Ellen caught the bug watching Lonnie have all these adventures. So she started going to the polar regions, and she actually took the methods he developed to get a 6-ton drill up the mountain in the middle of nowhere to drill ice cores in parts of Antarctica that have never been, because before the Thompsons, all ice cores were drilled on like the military bases. And she was like the one who said, hey, drop us off 7 hours and into the middle of nowhere in Antarctica and Greenland, and we'll drill an ice core the way Lonnie does on top of a mountain and get records that no one's ever gotten before. So, like, to Alex's note, it's infectious, and everyone in his orbit like joins in, supports it, makes the dreams and the ambitions bigger.
Speaking on the making the dreams and ambitions bigger, so I'm sure some people who listen to my podcast or read my stuff, they want to know, how does one get with a camera, maybe a good editing system, but they have a big dreams. How did you guys get there? I know it's hard, we have several minutes, but what's the most important steps as far as a person with a camera, audio system, maybe their MacBook, but they feel the weight of the world and reality saying, I can't do what these guys did with Canary. I'll never make it. What can they do to stop thinking that way and start making those steps towards something like Canary?
Yeah, so I would say leverage what you can. Like when I was younger, I got an opportunity to direct a documentary for the band Tegan and Sarah. And I had just left a job that paid me a good amount of money. They're a rock band, so their budget wasn't something where I could just go get the nicest and biggest camera. But I got my own camera. I borrowed 3 other cameras from a friend who shoots concerts uh in Silver Lake, and like these are like camcorders, not like big red cameras. And I brought them all on tour with me, and I'd set up 3 cameras on a tripod every show, and then I would roam around with my camera, and I ended up cutting every performance of a certain song into one master music video with like 40 angles. So their clothes were changing constantly, but like it gave the illusion that this was a big production. And that's kind of the spirit you need to do. Like I worked with this guy shooting stuff just for free because I was part of that community. Sometimes I'd get money. Most of the time it would just be like, hey, I'm doing a cool thing. And that energy and that like sharing and collaborating with people is how this was built. Like I had my background on Chef's Table, which allowed us to leverage like the Sloan Grant, which allowed us to take some people we work with on Chef's Table around the world to find scientists. And like the initial investment came from someone who my mom was friends with in the 8th grade, where my mom like raised us in like a Midwestern homemaker way, and her best friend, like her husband happened to have a production company, and we pitched to him, and every bit of money we got, every bit of opportunity was not through a formal um pathway in the industry. It was like, oh, we're planning a wedding, and someone hears what we're doing and they ask, well, where are you at with it? And then you tell them. So, like, I've made it a rule now, always talk about the projects you're doing with everyone around you. Be open about where you are and what your needs are and how you're trying to do it. And then, lastly, content cuts through those discussions and those opportunities like butter. Like, if you find a great story worth telling and are able to communicate why it is needed, why it is relevant, why it resonates with the times we're in, that is the thing that makes your job easier when you're pitching it. Because, like, the fundamentals of this movie should, can, and will exist is like unquestionable. And then lastly, if you're making a pitch material, try and do as much work as you can on the forefront so that whatever you're presenting feels like it's already baked. And that's time intensive. Alex and I did a lot of work that no one was asking for to fortify this. Like, even when we went on the first expedition, I spent 6 months learning how to cut a trailer. So we had a trailer that could fundraise for the movie, and that ended up being like our biggest sales tool, and people always complimented it all the time, and it's like the one compliment I can take gracefully, because like I must have cut 40 trailers to get to the point we got. So
Yeah. And Alex, is that pretty much the thing? It's just putting in the work where people won't see those hours upon months that you guys do as filmmakers?
I mean, that's absolutely the case. I think so. Take my trajectory, for example. I didn't come from a film world, right? I came from an academic world. I did my PhD in neuroscience. I was in a lab doing work, and now I'm, co-directing this film with Danny, and we have this whole slate of projects, on the back end of it. So if you look at the case of it's about figuring out how to figure it out. If you have some story that you think needs to be told, then it needs to be told. And you are going to fail 1,000 times, and then you're going to succeed. And the failure, you have to learn how to just learn from it, and learn that not to perseverate on the fact that person said no, the person you thought was going to be the golden door to get you there. There's someone else. There's someone else who's going to see the world the way you see the world. There's 8 billion people on this planet. There are people that will see the vision that you have, and you have to just keep selling the dream. And not stop working on it, right? So there's so many times in this process where Danny and I just looked at each other like we don't know what's next. We don't know how to get the thing. We have this. We got to get on a mountain. We don't have funds yet. What are we going to do? And it is a matter of just keep going. And this is the story of Lonnie's life too, right? If you have a purpose, if you have something that needs to get done, you need to allow failure to be part of that process. And it hurts. But when you get that success after so many failures, it feels so good. To have this film, I could have never imagined any of this. I have to be honest. I mean, I knew this film. I see this film as something that could change the way people see science, can change the way people see scientists, can feel differently about their interaction with the world and with climate change. I've known that forever. But I've always had my expectations on, we'll finish the movie, and I don't know if anyone will ever see it. Now this film is coming out in 150 screens across the United States on September 20th. And we have these week-long runs in New York and LA and Columbus, Ohio. And, we're getting to talk about the film process. We're getting to, learn from other people. We get to see the inspiration that people have derived from this. It is totally mind-blowing. Right. And at the lowest points of the low, I could have never imagined how high this could be. And you just need to keep going through. When things are bad, you just keep walking. Right. And and finding a way and never give up on the dream. Sell the dream.
Yeah. And
Sorry, I didn't
final,
mean to.
no, this is great. And final question, you were speaking to that, but just I'm sure you guys had a special screening for Lonnie and his close friends and family. What was that moment like? Because I know your your documentary is awesome. So that must have meant a lot to both of you, since both of you have a personal connection to the family, but you also want to make sure that their stories are heard. What was that day like for both of you?
I mean, it's nerve-wracking because you're summing up someone's whole life in an hour, 40 minutes roughly, and you have to make a bunch of choices, and you don't know whether they're the right choices. You have your reasons, you have your rationale, you say this works from like a storytelling perspective, but you don't know how it's going to differ from how they see themselves. And Lonnie has since told us like he couldn't have found a better team to do this, and he's really excited about the film coming out, and he has high hopes for it to inspire people not just to do something about climate change, but be instructive for chasing your dreams. Like everyone's got one life, and Lonnie's very passionate about how do you find your purpose? How do you keep going? And, you know, he endured 10 years of failing to like accomplish what he accomplished, getting a drill up a mountain to get these ice cores that no one even thought to get. And what started as like something that everyone wrote off became something incredibly important. And that's how we all feel when we're chasing our dreams, is like, will anyone really care about this science story? Like I find it interesting. Will other people, you know, there are times we were making the film where we were in the throes of the edit. It was really hard. And the impression I got talking to people I knew from the entertainment industry is like, when are you going to wrap it up?
Oh, that's
Like
horrible. Yeah.
when are you going to, you know, sew up the patient and ship it? Cause you got to move on. And that's not how I work. It's like, we get it right and we figure out how to do it. And yeah, and I think just so much of it feels like failing when you're chasing your dreams. And then eventually you just get comfortable with that and kind of into it. And then you're like, you know, Pixar, they always say fail fast. Because when you fail, then you get closer to where you actually need to be. And you just need to keep going through that and exposing yourself to more and more people and more opportunities. And you count on serendipity for every step forward, but you manufacture serendipity by keep moving forward.
Thank you guys so much for your time. I'm really excited for Canary, and as I'm sure you guys will have a lot of slate of films down the road with you guys. You guys, this is a long time partnership. I'm forcing this. Is this on you guys? This is correct? Am I correct on this?
Yes.
We are working together. We have a whole slate of stuff together. We love working together. Our producer on Canary is also part of our production team going forward, Adam Paul Smith. The three of us just we have that kind of shared passion. It's the same with Lonnie's teams, right? Once you have the right set of people together, you just don't let go of those people and you keep pushing.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for your time. Really love Canary, and you might the next time I interview you guys, you might not want to. Alex, you can kick me off the media tour because I'm gonna nag you about that 10-hour Alex cut for Canary. So
and I think one more quick thing is that this film was, I mean, we specifically filmed it to be shown on the big screen. We brought these cameras up to 19,000 feet. We brought the drones up to 19,000 feet, 20,000 feet to show this story with all of its magnificence. So if you do have an opportunity to see it on the big screen on September 20th or in New York, LA, and Columbus for the September 15th to September 21st, please go see it on the big screen, because it feels, you get those tingles in your back when you see some of those mountain shots and kind of feel the story at the same time. It's I don't know. I just want to make that plug because it is, going to the theaters is can still be very special.
And you too, Danny, final?
And I would say canary.oscilloscope.net to type in your zip code and find out where you can watch it. Probably over 100 people pushed themselves to the absolute limit to make this film, and 1,000 people have been with Lonnie on all his previous expeditions. So there's a lot of humanity packed into it, and that to me is why we go into those dark rooms and look at the big screen, is to see ourselves and the best of humanity. So yeah, I just want as many people to see as possible and to know the real life Indiana Jones, Lonnie Thompson.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Greg.
Great.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Talk soon. Bye.
Talk soon.